Hello everyone, this is Padmanabh Reddy and welcome to Lit Critique. So in our previous videos, we discussed about the opening lines of the general prologue as well as the three characters that open into the general prologue. For today's video, we'll be looking at the three more characters which Chaucer introduces, namely the Nun Prioress, the monk and the friar. After introducing us the three characters that belong to the nobility class, Chaucer now decides to discuss us the three characters that belong to the religious class. So now, or as we call them as clergy. So now the first character that Chaucer will be introducing to us is the character of the Nun Prioress. So let us now go into the lines of the Nun Prioress and then discuss what Chaucer is telling about her. There was also a nun, a prioress, that of her smiling was full simple and coy. Her greatest oath was but of Saint Loy, and she was clapped Madam Eglantine. Full weal she song the service divine, intuned in her nose full semele, and French she spake full fair and fetishly, after the school of Stratford at Bow, for French of Paris was to her unknown. So right away in the opening lines we are told that she is a nun who is a prioress again. So prioress here means that she is a head of the nuns of a particular order. So again we'll not get into the orders right now. I'll discuss more of the orders when we come to the friar part. But here just remember that prioress, she is a kind of a leader to some group. Okay, so when again we are told that she is a very simple woman, she is very coy, she is very modest as well. We are told that her greatest oath was but Saint Loy. So here Saint Loy means Saint Aegilius, so who was a patron saint of the goldsmiths in England. So this is a very oblique reference that again Chaucer gives. So we are told that she is a really good woman, as well as again in the next lines we are told that she spoke the French which was spoken in Stratford at Bow. So this Stratford at Bow is a district in London. So it is in present day London as well. Okay, we are told that again this lady doesn't speak the French that is spoken in Paris. She didn't know the French that is spoken in Paris. So this literally means that she doesn't know French. She just knows like 3 or 4 lines and she just keeps on repeating them. So what happens is when people listen to her, they think that this woman actually knows French, but she doesn't know French. Because again Chaucer, this is the brilliance of Chaucer. He tells that she spoke the French spoken at Stratford at Bow because she didn't know the French that was spoken in Paris. So this is a very Horatian way of satirizing a woman over here, just telling that she doesn't know the language but she just pretends knowing that. At meat well ye taught was she withal, she leet no morsel for her lips fall, ne wet her fringes in her sauce deep, well could she carry a morsel and well keep, that no drop ne fill upon her breast, in courtesy was set full mutual her lest, her over lip wiped so she clean, that in her cup there was no furthing seen, of grease when she drunken had her draught, full seemly after her meat she wrought. So again here Chaucer again tells more descriptions about this nun prioress. So he tells that this nun is really good with table manners. He tells that when she drinks some soup, nothing falls on her dress. She knows how to swipe her upper lip. She cleans it really well. And when she even drinks, she even drinks something, and when she even eats something, no part of it is left in the utensil or it falls on the table. And she reads this food in a very seemly manner. So she really has this very well mannered table habits. So this is also a very important characteristic that Chaucer tells us with regard to the nun prioress. And sickly she was of great despot, and full pleasant and amiable of port, and pain higher to counterfeit cheer of court, and to be in establish of manner, and to ben holden digne of reverence, but for to speaken of higher conscience, she was so charitable and so piteous, she would weep if that she saw a mouse caught in a trap, if it were dead or bled. So again we see that Chaucer makes this Horatian satire on this nun prioress. So as she imitated the French language, and at that point of time even the French language was the language of the court. So again here she kind of imitates the manners of the court. So she tries to walk like people in the court. She tries to sit like them. She tries to talk like them. She kind of imitates them, and it is not even pleasant. So she takes real pains in doing that. So she's not directly going, and she's not naturally doing it. So she is taking much pains in doing that. So kind of she's trying too hard to imitate it. And this is a kind of Horatian satire that again Chaucer plays. Even though she is not a part of the court, she tries to be a part of the court by imitating a person from the court. And again we are told that this Nun Prioress is very, very compassionate, as well as she is charitable, that even if a mouse is caught in a trap, she would weep for that, if it were dead or if it were alive. So this is a really good character. But again Chaucer kind of brings this tint in her by bringing this Horatian satire into her. So the character of the Nun Prioress is really, really interesting when Chaucer does this. Of small hounds had she had that she fed, with roasted flesh or milk and vestal bread. But sore wept she if one of them were dead, or if men smote it with a yard smart. And all was conscience and tender heart. So again Chaucer here tells us that she has a really tender heart. She had some dogs with her. She would feed them with bread or with some meat, and she would weep if one of them were dead, or if any man came and beat them up with a stick. So she has a really tender heart. Full semele her wimple pinched was, her nose treatise her iron grey as glass, her mouth's full small and thereto soft and reed, but sickly she had a fair forehead. It was almost a span broad, I trow, for hardily she was not undergrove. Full fetis was her cloak, and I was wore, of small coral about her arm she bar, a pair of beads gauded all with green, and thereon hang a brooch of gold full sheen, on which there was first write a crowned A, and after amor vincit omnia. In this last part of the description of Nun Prioress, Chaucer discusses about the physical appearance of this Nun Prioress. So he tells that she wears a wimple, that is a cloth covering the head of this nun. So he tells that she wears a wimple that is really seemingly well. She has a fair forehead, she has a fair face, and her eyes are as grey as a glass. He also tells that she wears this beads around her hand, her arm, and they are green in color. And we are told that this Nun Prioress wears this coral on which there is this inscription of the letter A, and it is written that amor vincit omnia in Latin. That means love conquers all. So this is a physical description that Chaucer gives about this nun. Another nun with hire had she, that was her chapelaine and priestess 3. So there is this brief description, just a 2-line description about another character that Chaucer introduces to us. This is another nun, and we are told that she is again travelled by a secretary of hers and also 3 more priests. So we are only given like 2 lines, so not anything more is mentioned about this other nun. These are the only 2 lines that Chaucer gives about it. A monk there was, a fair for the mastery, an outrider that loved venery, a manly man to be an abbot able. Full many deaf-knight horses had he in stable, and when he rode men mighty his bridle here, jingling in a whistling wind all's clear, and eke as loud as doth the chapel bell, there as his lord was keeper of the cell. Character of the monk is one of the darkest characters that we'll meet in the Canterbury Tales. So an ideal monk should be only interested into the religious practices as well as the study of books, and stay in the monastery. But the monk we are meeting right now, this is a monk who is interested more into the activities outside the monastery. So we are told that this is a monk who loves hunting. He has many horses, and he loves the business outside of the monastery. So when he rides on his horses and goes on hunting, the girdle of those horses is as loud as a chapel bell. So this is again a very dark statement that Chaucer puts to us, and also this is a kind of writing which puts Chaucer into trouble, because a monk is to be represented as a really good man, but Chaucer here represents him as a very dark man. So this tells us about the society at that point of time and how the monks actually were at that point of time. Many of those monks. This is directly criticizing the institution of the church, and we'll see that when we come to the character of the friar, even to the friar, because he had serious problems with the Catholic Church, and we see clearly those symbols in the characters of the monk and the friar. The rule of Saint Maur or of Saint Benedict, by cause that it was of old and somdal straight, this ilk monk leet old things space, and healed after the new world the space. He hath not of that text a pulled hen, that saith that hunters ben at holy men, ne that a monk, when he is reachless, is linked till a fish that is waterless. This is to say a monk out of his cloister, but thilk text healed he not worth an oyster, and I said his opinion was good. So now Chaucer is going on putting some serious allegations on this monk. So we are told that the rules that Saint Maur or Saint Benedict set into this world that the holy man had to follow. He tells that he has left all those rules because they are somewhat strict, and he has now adopted into the modern practices. Modern, I mean, at his point of time, not ours. So he has adopted all the modern things, and as the holy texts also tell, which Saint Benedict and Saint Maur and also many Christian scholars have pointed out that people who go on hunting, they are not holy men. But this man has no regard for those things. He had already left those things, and we are told, and also Chaucer tells us that a man out of his cloister, that means a cloister is a walking area in a monastery. So a monk out of his cloister is like a fish out of a water. But he didn't consider them at all. He doesn't consider books at all. He's more interested into hunting. He's not a holy man at all. Though he's a monk, but he's not a holy man. So this is a kind of, again, a dark Juvenalian satire that he is putting. This is not the kind of satire that he puts in the Nun Prioress, because in Nun Prioress that was a soft comical type of parody, but here he is not at all doing a comedy. He's directly pointing out in a dark offensive manner, and this is a kind of writing that puts him into trouble, and this is where his ideas of being a journalist and portraying himself as a journalist in this Canterbury Tales comes handy. What should he study and make himself would upon a book in cloister alway to pour, or swinken with his hands and labour as Austin bit? How shall the world be served? Let Austin have his swing to him reserved. Therefore he was a prickasaur all right, greyhounds he had as swift as fowl in flight, of pricking and of hunting for the hare, was all his lust for no cost would he spare. Even in these lines we are told that this monk doesn't have any interest in doing the holy work or the work that is specified for him in the monastery. He's all interested into doing works that are outside of his monastery. So even in these lines we are told that let Augustine have work for himself. Saint Augustine is a Christian scholar, so he told that we have work to do for God in this world, so we have to work really well, we have to do holy work. But here this man doesn't even think about anything. He doesn't care about the holy work. He doesn't study, he doesn't do anything. He's just for namesake a monk. Hunting is not illegal, but if you are a monk, that is a serious offense. And that is something that we are told over here, and we are told that this monk has also dogs with him that he uses to hunt hares, and this was his pleasure, and he wasn't anyway backing off from this pleasure. He was totally interested into this hunting activities, and those activities which are not done by holy men at all. So Chaucer is seriously getting into trouble over here, because this is again radical writing. I see his sleeves pure filed at the horn, with gris and that of finest of a laund, and for to festen his hood under his chin, he had of gold wrought a full curious spin. A love knot in a greater end there was, His heed was ballad that shone as any glass, and eke his face as he had been anoint. In these lines, Chaucer delves into the physical description of this monk. So we are told that this monk has a sleeve which is folded up and which is made of this squirrel fur, which is one of the finest in the land. So this monk is extremely rich, and again here Chaucer critiques this person and also critiques this institution of the church, because church people and the people belonging to a religious class, they shouldn't be rich at all. They have to donate all their money to the poor, and they have to only serve the poor as well as serve the God. But here we are seeing that he is neither serving God, he is neither serving the poor people. He is totally into this hunting thing, and also he is very, very rich. And this richness is something that Chaucer has problems with, because a religious person is not to be rich. So we are told that he also had this gold pins into his dressing, and also we are told that he doesn't have any hair. So he was a bald person, and his head shone as good as glass. So this is again a hilarious description that Chaucer gives, that he is totally a bald person. And we are also told that even his face shone like a glass, as if he applied some oil to it. So this is a very, again, interesting description of this man called as a monk. He was a lord full fat and in good point, his even step and rolling in his heed, that stemmed as foreigns of a lead, his boots supple, his horse in great estate. Now certainly he was a fair prelate, he was not pale as a 4-point ghost, a fat swan loved the best of any roast. His palfrey was as brown as is a berry. In these lines now, Chaucer again continues with this physical description of this monk. We are told that he had really good eyes which went from side to side, and then he had really good boots. His horse was in a very good condition, and his saddle was as brown as a berry. So this man is really plump, and he was a handsome ecclesiastical man. So this man wasn't some pale ghostly kind of appeared person. He had really good physique. So he was a fat man, obviously. So we are told that he loves hunting. We are also told that he loves a roasted fat swan for eating. And also, so we see all these satirical things that Chaucer puts onto this monk while he is criticizing this institution of the church, as well as he is telling out to people how the real monks are in the today's world. Today's world, I mean Chaucer's world, in Chaucer's time. A friar there was, a wanton and a merry, a limenter, a full solemn man. In all the orders four is none that can so muchel of dolliance and fair langang. He had mad a full marriage of young women at his own cost. So next comes the character of the friar. Even he is one of the most controversial characters that Chaucer creates in this general prologue. So we are told right away in the first line that this friar is a pleasure loving person, and pleasure doesn't mean happiness over here. It has a sexual connotation. So again in the next lines we are told that he's a very solemn man. He has a limited territory, and among the four orders of the friars, he's one of the most respected persons. The four orders that Chaucer mentions over here are the Carmelites, the Dominicans, the Franciscans, and the Augustinians. So all these four are different kinds of orders that many of the friars maintained, and any friar has to belong to one of these orders. And we are not told that to which order this particular friar is of. Among all those four orders of friars, he is a really respectable man. We are told that this friar conducted many marriages of young women at his own cost. So we'll again get misled if we read it from a literal point of view. We have to read it from Chaucer's point of view, and his satire. This is the brilliance of Chaucer. In the first line, he mentions that this friar is a very pleasure-loving person, and this really has sexual connotations over here. And what this friar does is, he goes on sleeping with young women, and when he gets them pregnant, so he marries them off to other people at his own cost, obviously, to escape defamation and also escape his scandals. So this friar is a really kind of a dark, and also this friar is very controversial figure. Friars are again ought to be very good and very good persons who need to serve the poor, and also they need to stay in this monastery and perform their daily rituals and also daily activities that a holy man does. But this friar is nothing. He's not interested into that, and we'll look at that when we go into the next lines of this friar. Unto his order he was a noble post, full well beloved and familiar was he with franklins over all in his country, and eke with worthy women of the town, for he had power of confession, as said himself, more than accurate, for of his order he was licentiate, full sweetly heard he confession, and pleasant was his absolution. He was an easy man to give penance, there was as he wished to have a good petuance. In these lines, now Chaucer discusses that this man called as a friar is much more friends and much more beloved among the landowning people of the country, that he mentions as Franklin. So Franklin here means landowner, and we are told that this man had this power of confession, that people would come to him and they would confess their sins or the wrongs that they have done. So because he's a religious person, obviously, he had been licensed by his order to listen to all the confessions. And this man, we are told that he was very happy to forgive all those sins, because he knows that he would get money in return or gifts in return. So this is not a religious man at all. So we are told that he's a religious man, but by going by the orthodoxy, we'll see that a religious man doesn't accept money from people. He doesn't accept them. But here what is happening? Chaucer tells that this person accepts money for forgiveness. So he is literally attacking the institution of the Roman Catholic Church here, because a church or a religious institution has to serve the people, not to loot the people. Here he is telling that he is much more friends with the landowners, because landowners obviously have money. For unto a poor order for to yive is sign that a man is well shrive, for if he dost make avaunt, he wist that a man was repentant. For many a man so hard is of his heart, he may not weep, although him sore smart. Therefore, instead of weeping and prayers, men moot ye silver to the poor friars. His tippet was aye fast full of knives, and pence for to given fair wives. Again, in these lines, we see that Chaucer is parodying this friar. So he is literally in a Horatian as well as in Juvenalian kind of satires. He's literally burning this friar down. He's telling that people have to give to poor friars, people have to give money to poor friars instead of weeping. So he's telling that we can see the irony over here. He's already very rich. This friar is freaking rich, but again he's telling that people have to give to poor friars. He's telling that he himself is poor, but the irony is he's really rich. So we are also told that this friar has many knives in his hood, as well as many pins for young ladies. So as when he passed through towns and all, he gives these pins to young ladies. So even this friar is much interested into ladies. So we have seen the Squire in our previous video. The Squire was also much interested into ladies, but that was a different kind of interest. But here he's totally there is a sexual connotation that surrounds this description of this friar. We are told as this friar is much interested into prostitution, as well as he's much interested into taverns, that we will see later. This friar is a really bad person, and this is one of those writings that Chaucer gets trouble for himself. Not only friar will meet all those characters. We are told that this friar is one of the most best persons. So we are told that he is one of the best persons. So we can just imagine how the worst persons might be. If he is the best, then who are the worst? And certainly he had a merry note, well could he sing and play an honor rote, of Yedengus he bar outtry the press, his neck wit was of fleur de lis. Thereto he strong was a champion, He knew the taverns well in every town, and average hosteler and tapester, better than a lazar and a beggarster, for unto such a worthy man as he, accorded not as by his faculty, to have with sick lazars acquaintance, it is not honest, it may not avance, for to dealen with no switch poorly, but all with rich and sellers of vitally, and over all there as profit should rise, courteous he was, and lovely of service. There was no man nowhere so virtuous. He was the best beggar in the house, and yaf a certain firm for the grant. None of his brethren came there in his haunt. For though a wide had not a show, so pleasant was his in principle, yet would he have a further ere he went. So in these lines we are told that this man called as a friar, he knows every tavern that is in every village or every town, and not only he knows those taverns, he knows the innkeepers and the people who work over there. So tavern is a red light district, or here there is a sexual connotation. And also the tabard that Chaucer mentions in the opening lines, that was in London, and here he tells that every town has kind of a prostitution center and a red light district kind of thing. So he knew all those taverns. So tavern is literally means an inn or a lodging place, but here it has a sexual connotation. And this man knows every tavern and everyone who works over there. He has a merry voice, but also we see this side of his. And also religious people shouldn't have any affairs. Obviously they don't marry at all. They are not allowed to go physical with anyone. We have been shown that this friar has many relations outside the church as well as inside the church. He has been physical with so many women, and we are told that this friar doesn't like to sit with the sick and the poor and the suffering ones. He doesn't like to sit with the lepers because he thinks that it is below his dignity. Again, this is again a gross violation about what the religious rules at that point of time were. A religious person has to serve the poor, he has to give all his money, but this man is freaking rich, as well as he doesn't want to sit with any of the poor or any of the suffering ones, any of those ones who have leprosy. Here again we are told that he is one of the best beggars, and this beggar again tells that he asked for money for forgiveness. So no one of even of his friends or even people of his order would come to his territory. So this man would have some sort of person or some sort of acquaintance or some sort of person who would work for him in almost every town. So this friar has really good relations as well. His purchase was well better than his rent, and rage he could as it were right a whelp. In love days there could he much ill help, for there he was not like a cloister with a threadbare cope as is a poor scholar, but he was like a master or a pope. Of double worsted was his semicope, that rounded as a bell out of the press. Somewhat he lipsed for his wantonness, to make his English sweet upon his tongue, and in his harping, one that he had sung, his even twinkled in his heed aright, as doon the stars in the frosty night. This worthy lamenter was clept Hubert. So in these final lines that end the description of the friar, we are told that this friar has much income, and most of his income comes from the profits that he asks from people to forgive of their sins. At that point of time, friars were given some amount, some money to live off, but this man is collecting money from people outside. So this is not something that friars should be doing, and this is a critique of the Catholic Church that Chaucer is making over here. And we are told that this man is much worthy, and the last line, that worthy itself is very, very, very ironic as well as very controversial as well, because describing all these things and in the end telling that worthy literally is comical as well as is very satirical. We are told that this friar has this sweet English tongue. He makes his tongue sweet so that he can appeal more to people. And also Chaucer tells that this friar doesn't look like a poor man or a poor monk who has some thread around him, or he is like a pope. Like he is comparing this friar to a pope. He's telling that he is much learned man, he looks like this much learned man or a much learned pope, and this man, this friar, is called as Hubert. So we are given this name of this friar. Even Chaucer gives the name of the nun prioress as Madame Eglantine, and this friar is given by the name of Hubert. So these three characters are one of the most problematic characters that Chaucer ever wrote, although we can just exclude Nun Prioress from the controversial part of thing, but these two characters, the monk and the friar, are one of the most controversial characters that Chaucer creates in the Canterbury Tales. These kinds of writing is one of those things which got Chaucer into trouble. So Chaucer here is making fun of the Roman Catholic Church. He's telling that if things go on this way, obviously this church is not going to stand at all. So this is exactly that happens almost 150 or 200 years later, when Luther comes into the scene. Not even 200, it is more than 200 years, but Luther comes to the scene, and then he destroys this Catholic Church. He literally pulls out a Reformation gig, and he brings this Protestantism into Europe, and everything has then been changed, and we'll go into that when we'll discuss about the Renaissance and the Reformation part. But with the Chaucerian writings, we see that how Chaucer subtly, he totally destroys this church with his writings, and he tells to people that people like these kinds of friars and these kinds of monks exist in our society. So you have to be very much vigilant about them, because these guys are nothing but bastards. These guys don't even know anything, but they come to us, they ask us money, and if we give them money, they tell that your sins have been now forgiven. Although there is no forgiveness, but obviously forgiveness doesn't come from a person who just says, I forgive you. But here it is just happening that. So these three characters are called as the religious ones, and also we'll meet more religious characters, but these characters, these two, the monk and the friar, remain one of the most controversial characters that Chaucer has ever created. If you like this video, please don't forget to leave a like, comment, and share this video. Please don't forget to subscribe to Lit Critique. This is Padmanabh Reddy from Lit Critique signing off. Bye bye.